action. Hello, people. Hello, people. This is Bio once again from Ultra Spirit Runners. Yes, this is the part 3 of our COVID-19 series, the Truth About COVID-19 series. And my very good friend Ayo is here. And he's the best person to deal with this topic because he's, like I said in the first video, when I was introducing him and I was talking about his profile, he's a microbiologist and has been in the industry since 1986. You know, he's a pharmaceutical quality professional. He's heavily involved in quality control. 10 years managing microbiology QC laboratories, 14 years managing chemistry and biochemistry QC laboratories. He's walked all over Europe. You know, I mean, there is no better person to deal with this topic than I. So I'm not going to waste much time. If you want to find out a bit more about him and whether he's the right person, go to the first video, watch it at the beginning. I did give all his, you know, his qualifications and everything. I talked about it there. So we're going to part 3 now. And I thank you once again for finding the time to do this video. We're so grateful. It's been very, very educational. I've learned enough from it. So going straight to the next question. What is the normal process of making a vaccine? And how comes the COVID-19 vaccines were developed so quickly? Because people have expressed a lot of doubt and skepticism because they're saying, well, this vaccine was created so quickly that it didn't go through all the processes and it can't be perfect. There must be a lot of flaws. They've not tested it well enough and all that. So this is our opportunity to hear you do this as a living so you would know. So if you could please tell us what is the normal process of making a vaccine and how comes the COVID-19 vaccines were developed so quickly?
Cool, thank you. Great. So the one thing I would say, and thank you again for having me, and I hope that we can get a lot of enlightenment to people. One thing I would say is we already have, vaccines are not new. So the technology for vaccines are not new. In fact, the only thing that's new with the COVID vaccine is the fact that we understand biology a little bit more so we can make it more specific. Now, let me deal with this issue about timing, because that's the thing, I hear this a lot. Now, I will try and do this very, very quickly. When you run a clinical trial, they're run in 3 phases. There's phase 1, 2, and 3, not dramatic. And there's what we call phase 4. We don't talk about that much. Now, what happens is this. In phase 1, you're doing what we call the safety test. So you're not even talking about whether it works or not. You're talking about, let's find out if this thing is safe. So the very first test that you do, you get volunteers about anything between 10 and 50. And you get these volunteers, 50 volunteers, they come in, you do a test, you give them this, whatever your test ingredient is, you see if they react to it. If there's no negative reaction, perfect. Then you go into phase 2. In phase 2, you're now doing what we call the efficacy test. You get people who are suffering from the condition you're trying to test. You give them your medication to find out if it actually works. Once you find out it actually works, then you go into phase 3. Phase 3 is where you do your biggest study. Now, so phase 2, you're looking at anything between 50 and maybe 100 maximum people. You don't really go more than that. It's very rare to go beyond 100. Phase 3 is where you go into the tens of thousands. I'm talking like 20, 30, 40. I know, for example, the Pfizer vaccine in that phase 3, they tested it at least against 30,000 people. The Moderna vaccine, they had 60,000 people. The AstraZeneca one was roughly also about 60,000 people. So, and in phase 3, then that's where you do your dose range studies. You know, what dose should you give? Is it effective? So you're looking for different people from different populations. That's how they're able to tell you whether it's effective in various populations, or if you have this condition, don't take, because that's where they do all of, that's the biggest study. Now, here is the question. This is the thing. The COVID vaccines went through all these 3 phases as well. What people don't realize is that clinical trials don't take long. What takes long is the waiting. Let me give you an example. Right. When we had a trial, when we're looking for volunteers, you're looking for volunteers for somebody, say maybe you're developing something against, say, psoriasis or eczema. Just think about how long it would take just to even recruit 10 people for your phase 1. You could easily be waiting 2 or 3 years. Right. And then you're now looking for 100 people for your phase 2. You can't use those same 10. You're looking for a different set of people for your phase 2. That could easily take another 2-3 years, easily. I know people might think, oh, but the rarer the condition, the less likely. And think about it. Most of you, when you're in the underground reading your metro and you get to the page where it says clinical trial, you just move over the page. Like, if you think I'm going to volunteer. I'm not even going to do it. And that's the truth. You have to get a lot of people. It's actually mainly students who do it, because students they get paid, and students are the ones who tend to volunteer, because that's. And then you're now talking about phase 3, where you're looking at trying to look for 30,000 people, 40, 50,000 people for something, maybe a disease that's not very common. So here's the question. We have a pandemic. How long do you think it took Pfizer to get 60,000 volunteers for COVID?
I don't think it would take long, because people are desperate. In so many people, exactly.
When you were reading through my bio, I worked for a company called Develop Biosciences. We found out that one of the drugs we're developing could be effective against COVID. We weren't developing it for COVID, we're developing it for psoriasis. We struggled to get enough patients to do our phase 1. I'm talking about, we're looking at about 50 people. We struggled to get as many people to do our phase 1 study. We were doing our phase 1 study, took us like 2 years just to look for 50 volunteers. When we found out that it could be effective against COVID, and we announced that we are going to go into COVID trials, we got 60,000 volunteers in 2 weeks.
Wow. So the process of when you first saw, so you said for the first test, how long did it take you to get people?
It took us like 2 years just to get like 50 volunteers, 50, because we're testing it for psoriasis. It took, so
this wasn't with regards to COVID test. This was
this same medicine was being developed for psoriasis.
Oh, right. What is psoriasis? Sorry,
psoriasis is like a skin infection. It's not an infection, but a skin condition. Maybe like you can call it the worst case of eczema. It's really bad. You know, when people have this overreaction, your skin overproduces, and then you get this like bold patches of it's very itchy. It's not a very good condition. It's just very itchy. It's not life-threatening necessarily, but it's just very itchy. It's not very great. Now, it took us like 2 years just to find 50 people to volunteer. The moment we found we could use that same medicine, it had some effect against COVID because it was an anti-inflammation drug. And the whole COVID, that cytokine storm I talked about, is an inflammation response. Once we found this could work, we applied for a trial to carry out the trial. We got 60,000 volunteers in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So when people are talking about the speed isn't because they didn't do the trials. The speed is because it just took so much quicker to get the volunteers. That's the first reason why it was quick. The second reason why it was quick is the nature of the disease. If you're studying something, again, like eczema takes a long time to clear, or psoriasis takes a time to clear. So when you're taking the medicine, you could be taking that medicine for 6 months to a year before you see clearance, enough to be able to demonstrate that it works. With COVID, when you get an infection, everything happens within 2 weeks. You're either going to be dead or you're not. You know, when you get the illness, or we can see the effect very quickly. So the moment you get, so when people volunteer and you're in the stage where you actually are ill and you're in a trial, we can very, very quickly tell if this drug is going to be effective, because we know that the natural progression is very short. You're looking at this from the time you demonstrate infection to the time maybe morbidity happens. It's like 15 days, maybe maximum a month. So first of all, you think about the fact you got volunteers very quickly. You've got a disease that very quickly is a very rapid disease. You can very quickly tell if your medicine is going to work. So those are the two reasons why the vaccine came out very quick. It wasn't because it went through the regular trials. It's just that it was. So what happens is this: you hear on the news, some group of researchers have discovered a drug that's going to be effective against this. When they make that announcement, they haven't even started the clinical trials. And so the reason why when you hear that announcement, and it takes maybe about 10 years before you actually find out that medicine comes to reality, is because they now have to go through these phases. And it's the time it takes. The time is not because they're doing long experiments. It's just the time it takes to get volunteers.
And get volunteers, yes.
And also the kind of disease you're talking about. Because take, for example, if a pharmaceutical company said, we found the drug that cures obesity, but we need volunteers. Do you think that trial would take very long? Very quickly, you get millions of people volunteering.
Yeah.
Like, this is a drug that you can eat whatever you want, but you're not going to put weight on. There will be volunteers like.
Of course, yes.
So the trials will happen very quickly. Does that mean the drug is not safe? Of course it's safe. It's just that they were able to do the trials much quickly because they had that's all there is to it. It's nothing. They did not go through any shortcuts. That's the reason why. So that's the thing about the speed. And just going into the actual vaccines, I just want to, sorry, I know I've taken a bit of time on that, and I'll try to.
Go on, yeah, go
when
on.
people just one of the myths that people talk about. Remember, I said very clearly in one of those videos, I can't remember, it's the second stage. I said this is an RNA vaccine. Now, if you, again, I don't want to bore you with lots of biology, but if you just go into Google and type in two things, type in DNA translation and DNA transcription. Those are the two things you need to remember. DNA translation, transcription. Even if you just remember DNA translation, it will come up with transcription. Now, the way your body works, information is stored in DNA, but you don't generate the proteins from DNA. What happens is your body generates what we call a messenger RNA. So you have an enzyme called RNA polymerase, which will interpret the data and generate the RNA. And then that RNA will go into your cell. It will be translated by an organelle within your cell called the ribosome. That ribosome interprets the information of the RNA to produce the protein. Now, so when people tell you, but it's biologically incorrect for someone to tell you that they're going to modify your DNA, because RNA and DNA do not integrate. It just does not happen. It's almost like saying what your water and oil mix. It does not happen. Biologically, it's inaccurate. If someone tells you they're modifying your DNA by giving you an RNA vaccine, it's totally incorrect, because RNA does not integrate. So if it was a DNA vaccine and you said that, I might give it to you. But it's an RNA vaccine. It doesn't work like that. The easiest way to interpret RNA DNA is, if you imagine in the old days, for those of us who are a bit older, in the old days, we used to buy these records, the vinyl records.
Yeah, the vinyl records, yes.
Yeah, when you play them for so long, they start to jump. So what you do in the old days was you would keep your vinyl and record it onto a cassette. Yeah. Yes. You will play your cassette, and then when your cassette gets broken, then you go to your vinyl, make another recording, and you put your cassette in your cassette player. Yeah. So remember your vinyl, your cassette, and your cassette player. Your DNA is your vinyl. So your DNA doesn't. You don't play your DNA all the time. Your DNA reproduces. You get a messenger RNA. That messenger RNA you then stick into your cassette player. That's the ribosome that generates the music. That's the easiest way to interpret it. So it's an RNA vaccine. It's not a DNA vaccine. You cannot put your cassette into your record player. It wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. And that's the same thing. RNA, DNA don't work like that. That's the easiest way to explain that. So that's that one. In terms of the aborted cells, that doesn't even, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, they didn't even use aborted cells. Now, the whole aborted cell thing, I need to just address that very quickly. Now, yes, when you grow viruses, you have to grow them we grow them on embryonic cells. Now, what happened was in God knows what it was, I think it was about 1940, 1960, there was a fetus was aborted, and some of the cells, what I need to say to people very clearly was the fetus was not aborted for the purposes of the cell. The fetus was going to be aborted, end of story. That was going to happen. It's a bit like when someone dies and you got an organ transplant. That person died. We didn't kill the person so we can take their organs.
Yes.
So we're taking the organs. So the fetus was already aborted. I don't know the reasons behind it, but the fetus was aborted. We took some cells, and those cells have been propagated ever since. And so when we grow the viruses for the AstraZeneca, you have to grow viruses on these type of cells. But it's not like we went and aborted lots and lots of fetuses and then we stuck the viruses in to grow, because you have to grow this virus. Remember I said the viruses are not living. They have to grow within the cells. So for the AstraZeneca vaccine, you have to grow the viruses. So they grow them in these cells. But this is my question, and I want to, again, to make things easy. Say you're starting off as a farmer 25 years ago. A guy gives you a handful of maize or corn. You plant that handful, and then you generate, a whole heap. Then out of the heap that you harvest, you keep like 3 or 4 like whole cobs, and you plant that again, and you multiply that until you get multiple. You've done God knows how many generations. My question to you is this: 50 years down the road, what's the connection between the original handful you got and the corn cob you're harvesting like 50 years later? Tell me what the relationship is. The truth is, yes, there is a link in some sort of way, but actually it's not the same thing, because you're talking about, and that's pretty much what's happened. So the original cells that happened have just been propagated and propagated and propagated. That's the first thing. So they didn't abort a cell for that purpose, number one. Number two, there are 2 very important tests that are carried out when you're doing anything to do with DNA, because there's a huge sensitivity around DNA because of what it is, genetic material, and what I call host cell protein. Now, that's all I can say about those tests. We test down to what I call picogram levels. Now, a picogram is 1/1000th of a gram. That's 1 and 12 zeros. That's
God.
the level of DNA that we look for. That's how tiny. So even if there was a chance at all that there was any part, let's even assume that this embryonic whatever existed, we're going down to the level of 1 to 12 zeros of a gram, not kilogram, of a gram. So you have a gram that you're dividing into, I think it's 100,000 billion. That's a gram is so tiny, then you're going to 100,000 billionth of a gram. If there's any chance that any bit of it exists, that's how little it's going to be, and that's pretty much nothing.
Yes.
So for anybody to tell you that they did not abort cells to grow these things, that's just not true. And I'm sorry I took a bit of time, but I needed to explain that.
No. I think it's good. Yeah, I think it's very good, because those are the doubts have been casted on the vaccine. The fact that it was so quick, and all of a sudden people don't realize this is a process. This is a process. The process that it normally takes is not unique just to this COVID vaccine. It's the same process that has been used for other vaccines as well. It's just that they weren't aware of that process when it came to the other vaccines, because a lot of people weren't even born when some of those vaccines were created. So you wouldn't suddenly go researching it, because it just didn't happen when you were, the findings were not there when you were born. You didn't discover them when most people were born. So thank you for ironing that out, and also talking about the different vaccines as well. So we're going to the next question. So it looks like we only have 2 questions here, because you've dealt with the myths that surround, that have been casted on the vaccines. And so my next question is, medical facts have been released by doctors and researchers which highlight the vaccines are unsafe. What's your scientific opinion about these views? Because I've seen a number of videos where they've said that the vaccine is unsafe, and they've gone into lots of details and everything. Now, when I say some medical doctors and researchers, I'm not talking about people who are, I've not watched any video from a microbiologist who's talked about it. But from other people, there's a video I watched about somebody who was, what's he called now? Some dentist, and then there's another one from another guy that is totally different. What do they call them? Those who do research, other alternative.
Like a nutritionist type person, or alternative medicine.
Yeah, alternative medicine. Yeah. What did you call it again? Sorry?
Maybe a homeopath.
Yes.
Yes,
exactly. Okay. Yeah, a homeopath was giving his view. It's not safe. It's not going to take. My question I asked myself was, hold on a minute. You're an homeopath. You don't know anything about microbiology. So why? What gives you? What research have you done about it? He's gone on Google. I've probably done a little bit of, and then he's come up with some conclusion. So please highlight these things that have been highlighted. Can you just talk about them? Is this vaccine actually safe? Or all these things that these experts are talking about, is it true? Do we have any cause for concern? What are your views?
Okay, very quickly, if you remember, when I was talking about the trials, I said there are 3 phases. The very first thing we do in any medicine is the safety tests. Yes. So, and if it doesn't pass that, it doesn't go beyond that. The trial dies there and then. End of story. So when people tell me that they don't think it's safe, I'm thinking, how much safer do you? So first of all, you do specific tests for safety. When you move into the efficacy testing in phase 2, you're still looking for the safety, because of course, if people react to it, you would report that. And if the reactions are such that, it's going to be unsafe, the trial will stop. Yes. When you go into phase 3, when I say you're doing your dose ranges, you're looking at populations, you're looking at all manner of things, you are still looking at efficacy and safety. You're just doing it in a larger. Now, here's the question. Here's the thing, just to make people, if you take paracetamol, everyone takes paracetamol, not a problem at all. I actually happen to have paracetamol here. There is this bit of paper that people never look at. They kind of just throw it away because it's like, for them, it's packaging. If you go into that piece of paper, it's called a patient information leaflet. You will look at the side effects. For paracetamol that people just throw into their mouths without even thinking about, when you look at the side effects on paracetamol, from that bit of paper, you probably wouldn't want to take paracetamol again. Now, here's the thing. Every single thing that is noticed during a trial is recorded.
Yes.
Every single, whether it's related to that medicine or not, it's recorded, and then it's analyzed. If it's considered to be too much, the medicine will not be released because it'll be considered unsafe. So that's the thing. In fact, the discovery of Viagra was actually how Viagra was discovered. Viagra was being developed for something else, but because you have to report and record everything that happens when you're taking that medicine, when the guys were going back and saying, last night was a bit, and that's how Viagra was found. They found that, and when a lot of men came and kept reporting that, last night was a bit, then they thought, hang on a sec, and then they switched. This is actually true. So they switched and thought maybe it actually works. And then they said the trial, and of course, Viagra came very quickly because when they put out the trial, they say, guys, here's a medicine that's going to make you more effective. Of course, they had enough people to volunteer for that. That was a very quick trial. Nobody complained about Viagra.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Exactly. Nobody complained about the speed at which Viagra came out because, hey, it's a good thing. Everyone likes Viagra, But on a serious note, so everything is recorded. So in terms of safety, you can't get more safe. And then the third thing I said, which maybe people may have missed, I said there are actually 4 phases. Phase 4 is what we call the pharmacovigilance. Now, every single drug that is on the market, no matter how long it's been on the market, they record side effects. So whenever if you've given a drug and your doctor says, or you go to your doctor and you say, oh, actually, when I took that drug, they're obligated. In the UK, it's called the yellow card scheme. Again, you can Google it. Go into Google and type in yellow card scheme. Any medicine you take, if you go back and say to them, oh, I had this effect, the doctor will fill that card in. And at the end of every year, they collate all that information. And that's the reason why sometimes they come back with new advice and say, oh, we used to advise that you do this with this medicine. Please don't do that anymore because we found out new information. Because as you use medicine, they're continually gathering information. Is the medicine safe? Of course it's safe. Can I tell you it's 100% safe? I cannot tell you that because every single medicine is given on what we call the risk-benefit ratio. Every drug has a risk because for every trial, people would have reported adverse effects. But here's the question. If someone says to you, you get a COVID vaccine, your hand might be swollen for a bit. Besides, by the way, when they tell you side effects, what you also need to find out, what are they saying? Because from a medical practitioner's point of view or from a clinical trial researcher, a side effect is anything different from the norm. So if I say the site of injection hurt me, that would be recorded as a side effect. If I say my arm was slightly painful for 2 days, that would be recorded as a side effect. So if you ask me a direct question, were there any side effects? Of course, my answer will be yes. What you need to ask is what side effects were that? And then it's only when you so they would record all those as side effects. Now, for the next however long, those medicines will be monitored. Every single medicine you take will be monitored. When people ask me, but we don't know the long-term effects, every new medicine that comes online, we don't know the long-term effects beyond what we've done on phase 1 to 3. Again, you only know about it because there's been so much noise about COVID. But when Herceptin came out, which was this breast cancer drug, which is going to revolutionize treatment of breast cancer, it was once we got the results and we felt it was okay, we went into using it for females who had breast cancer, but we were still gathering information. The same as we would do with COVID. Nobody talked about Herceptin because it was going to save the world from breast cancer. So people just need to think, when you talk about side effects, how safe it is, the drug is as safe as any other drug out there.
Exactly. And the thing is, because that's another thing I wanted to say as well, or highlight as well, is that people talk about, oh, don't take the vaccine because, so many people have reported all these side effects, so which means it's not safe. And I'm like, hold on a minute. We know that a lot of medication out there, drugs out there, have side effects. A lot of them have side effects. And you just mentioned, even just common paracetamol has side effects. Ibuprofen has some side effects. There's certain things that you mustn't do when you take you can't take ibuprofen on an empty stomach, for example, because if you do, it can be catastrophic, So I don't understand why people just think that because the COVID vaccine some people who have taken the COVID vaccine have had some side effects, it means it's totally unsafe. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, no matter how many tests that you guys do, there's no one person you can't have, everybody's different, and there's no way you're going to be able to determine how the vaccine is going to, everybody in this earth is going to react to the vaccine. Your test can reveal by your 60,000, your 100,000, or 30,000 people can reveal how many people are going to react to it, or most people, but there's no way. You're still going to have that one person that probably wasn't covered by the, by the test, that would have a certain reaction. And like they do with most other drugs, the doctor will say, stop using it immediately, and then maybe come in for some assessment. So, so is that, so what would you, one last word on side effects? What do you have to say about that? For those who are saying it's got side effects, so it's not safe.
Well, that's the thing. Like I just said, what people need to find out when they use the word side effect, that word is a very generic word, and it applies to any reaction that you see that is observed during the use of that drug in a trial is classed as a side effect. That could be anything from a headache, a bit of pain in your elbow, a bit of pain at the side. Inject that, all those are recorded as side effects. Now, what you need to find out is whether it's defined as two things. We actually we have what we call adverse events. Now, if you record an adverse event, that's very different from a side effect. If you have what we call a serious adverse effect, the drug trial stops, because they will stop the drug trial. I'm not sure if people remember, there was some time ago at Northwick Park Hospital where there was a trial going on, and I think some people got killed, and some people had this elephant man situation.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
That was during a trial.
Yes.
Now the thing is, the moment that happened, the trial stopped.
Yes.
Nobody is going to let a trial continue if there are adverse effects that are actually that bad. So to be totally honest, in terms of is the drug safe, of course the drug is safe. And this is the other thing. If people understand the processes, the MHRA are there to make sure that nothing bad happens. People like myself, who are called qualified person, when I release, I sign a batch of drugs for sale. So once I put my signature on that certificate, I'm not only professionally liable, I'm taking personal responsibility as well. Now, in the EU, every pharmaceutical company has to have a qualified person. You are taking. I would effectively be thrown in jail. I would effectively be thrown in jail if I release a set of medicines that harms anybody. So the question is, do I want to go to jail for what? Why would I want to do that? Why would I release a batch of drugs that are not safe?
Yes. Fantastic. Excellent. Well, guys, you've heard it all. Ayo has gone into some real depth in explaining COVID, the vaccine, the side effects, the myths. It's covered every area that we can ever imagine about COVID. So you know, you're well informed. You can make up your own mind based on what he said. He's an expert in the field. Like I said, if you want to know his credentials, go to part 1 of this, the Truth About COVID series, and play the video, and you see his profile as someone who's been in the industry since 1986. Yeah, 1986. No, 1991 when he graduated, and he's got so many qualifications: MSc, CBIOL, FRSB. It's a European pharmaceutical qualified person. He's done a lot, and he's worked in a lot of the big, and he was involved. He was one of those headhunted when COVID started. So you heard it all from him. This is a channel that always educates people about health and fitness. We cover every angle, and we obviously, because COVID is, if you notice that we didn't rush to bring out this video, and the reason why we didn't rush to bring out this video is because we had to headhunt and get the right person to talk about this. Even though we've had so many professionals come to this channel, we wanted to speak to a microbiologist, someone who deals with viruses and vaccines. And you've heard it now from the right person who can educate us about this. So if you had any doubts, go to part 1, play part 1, play part 2, and play part 3, and then make up your mind. Thank you so much, subscribers, for subscribing to this channel. Thank you so much, Ayo, for coming and spending the time to go through 3 different parts. We've taken a lot of your time. But it was well worth it because we've waited so long to get you, and we're ever so grateful to have you on Ultra Spirit Runners. Subscribers, thank you so much for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're watching this video, please don't forget to click on the subscribe button at the bottom of this video, and don't forget to like part 1, part 2, or part 3, and all my other videos, because the whole purpose of this channel is to educate you and to equip you to live a health and fit lifestyle. For you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, and your body is a temple of God. You owe God to look after your body, and that is what this is about. It's not just focusing on you and what you're able to do, but also on the fact that if you take that step of faith and you trust in the Lord, it will enable you to be able to live a healthy lifestyle, so you'll be able to live for longer, healthier, and be able to fulfill your God-ordained destiny. Thank you so much for the time you spent with us, Ayo, and thank you, my viewers, for watching, and see you in the next video with the next professional, or with me coming to cover an area of fitness. God bless you all, and have a glorious weekend and a glorious week. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ayo. God bless you for coming. And I'm sure we're going to bring you back for some other topic.
We'll see. I'm happy to come back. And if anyone has any questions, they can talk to you. I'm happy to address those as well. Actually,
excellent.
Really, yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're so grateful.
No
God
problem.
bless you real good. And thank you so much for your time.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.